Well, thanks for dropping in. In this episode, we are going to talk about using video on private club websites. And there's more and more of it that's being used, as you've probably seen if you search the web and look at different clubs like I do. And some of that video is used in header images. So, or as header images, if you think of that on websites, where you'll see the video rolling behind the graphics, very common use of it. And we're seeing more and more clubs use it as a marketing tool, as an about us video, or showing off a club and its amenities and its membership and those sorts of things. So it's not a secret. Video is an extremely powerful tool. And as I like to say, video can take you places, it can teach you things, and it's a tool that can introduce you to people that you have never known before, which makes it a perfect marketing tool for private clubs. But all videos are not created equally, and there are countless ways to approach a video project. So in this episode, Steve Mulholland, who is our creative director at Storyteller, he and I get into the aspects of video production that can really be the difference between your club really standing out in your marketplace and your club looking like every other club in town. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Storyteller's Steve Mulholland. You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. Well, Steve, thanks for joining Crushing Club Marketing.
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. It's great to be here.
You know, for you who are listening and watching, Steve and I speak regularly, and some of these things that we're going to talk about today, we speak regularly about, usually in that format of like problem solving or getting ready to have a conversation with a client. So, you know, the purpose of this conversation and sharing it with you today is, providing that opportunity of like how our brains work and what we think of when we go into production. And Steve, as a creative director and a veteran producer and creative director, brings a different part of the process than what I bring to it. And so hopefully today, by sharing some of our insights and things we've learned, it will benefit you as you get ready to produce video, if that's part of your plan in the next year or so. Sound good?
Sounds great.
So let's just start with kind of from the top, because I think that a lot of times people, when they think about producing a video, they go right to like, oh yeah, well, you know, whether it's gear or types of cameras, or they might go like, we'll hear this a lot where it's like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so has a drone, and you know, you're like, that's great. But there's so many more things that go into a production before you ever even pick up a camera that most people never even think about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the thing that we try to focus on first and foremost is story. What do you want to say? How do you want the audience to feel after they've watched your video? So that's what we try to focus on before we ever talk about what kind of shots we're going to get or where we're going to be filming or anything like that. It's what do you want to say? How do you want your audience to feel? And what do you want them to take away from your video after they've watched it?
Yeah, and it's sometimes it can set you back on your heels as a client. At least it does that because it puts the viewer first in that context. And so often, a lot of times, you know, we see this with website copy too, by the way, but for sure, it's like a lot of times people think like, what do I need to tell people in this video? Like, what do I want to show them, instead of really saying, what are they looking for? And what do you want them to feel or think once they've finished watching this piece? And so often it starts with a message, right? I mean, it's like, well, another step back, the audience, like who is it that you are really trying to connect with this video, and getting really specific about that first.
Right. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you know, it's taking that audience into consideration. So many times we will find clients that they want to share kind of their latest toy or what the newest, shiniest thing that they've got to to that they're proud of. But it's like, you know what, is that going to make a difference in your audience's life?
Right.
Are they going to want to see that? What you really want to do is put yourself in the mind of the audience. What keeps them up at night? What pleases them? What brings them joy? Everything about your message needs to be about that audience member, that person watching your video, and what's going to compel them to take the next step, whether it's, you know, picking up the phone, filling out an application form for your club or for your product, whatever it is. You need to put yourself in the head of the audience, in their minds.
Yeah, and so a lot of times we think about video, and maybe even you're watching this or listening because of you're thinking about producing a video for your club, or it's come up in the past. But there are a lot of applications, right? So just taking that first one, like you're saying, Steve, it's thinking about if you're someone who is interested in learning about a club and you're producing a video for them, what are the things that you want people to think or feel at the end of that piece, right? And there's some videos that we'll reference and we'll have links to in the blog as well for this, but it's it might be that. But another thing that we'll see sometimes is clubs that are producing video for hiring purposes, and they might want to show a day in the life, or they might want to introduce a staff to prospective members or even to potential hires. So I guess the point in sharing that is that you really need to think about who that person is and what are the key messages you want to pass on to those people, because it can make a huge difference and set the tone for the entire piece, right? I mean, even down to visuals.
Right. I think the important thing when we talk to people at clubs is, you know, what is special about your club? A lot of clubs will say, oh, well, we're about family, and that's great. But what is it about your club that sets it apart? We want to create a sense of time and place. You know, what is the experience like of being at your club? Maybe it's driving down this beautiful flower-lined driveway up to the club, that feeling of leaving everything behind. You arrive at the club. We had one client who said when people get to their club, they want to exhale. And, you know, it's like going to the cabin, or it's like going up to the lake, whatever it is. What is it that's special about your club? We want to capture that in video. So kind of to create that experience through video for somebody that might be interested in your club. So we'll ask a lot of questions of our club clients. You know, what is it that's special about your club? Is there anything unique about your club? I think you know about a club that is actually on a lake, right, which sounds awesome. But, you know, that creates a whole different experience that sets it apart. You know, we've worked with a number of clubs that just have unique, distinct features that you want to showcase.
Right. And it's easy to get caught up in we have this, we have this, we have this. But when you can really tap into the spirit of the club is kind of what you're talking about, I think, as well. Let's just talk about style as well, because a lot of times people think, well, we're going to produce a video, but the details around it can be kind of confusing. In fact, I just wrote a blog about this, about when to script a video and when to use a documentary style approach. So for the listener, Steve, could you just kind of give a high level, your perspective of what a documentary style approach is and why that's effective?
Sure. Well, you know, we really embrace the documentary style approach. What that means is essentially that it's unscripted. The first thing you want to do is to discover the story through the people who live it. So those people who are passionate about your club, whether it's staff, directors, members, board members, whoever can really articulate that message, that's what we want to capture. So to contrast it from the typical approach where you write a script beforehand and you go out and you film and then you come back and you edit that script, what we try to do is to capture the content first, then go into story development and craft a story based on the words from people who are involved in the club, who are living the club. So that's a documentary style approach. As far as getting images of your club, what we're doing is that's a little bit more structured. We'll have an idea of what we want to capture, the course, the amenities, the clubhouse, all of those things. But it's not scripted beforehand. So that's essentially kind of documentary filmmaking is that it's unscripted. You're getting the content through the voices of the people who are living the experience.
So, and just for clarity, it doesn't mean that you just show up with the camera and just start asking people questions. I mean, part of, obviously there are a lot of different types of documentaries, but in this arrangement, what we try to do and the approach is that the people you're interviewing should have a sense for what you're going to ask them. I mean, if you want the best outcomes, you should prep them a little bit and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to understand. This is the message we're going after. But let the people respond in a way that is very authentic to them rather than having a canned line that they're supposed to read. A lot of times people say like, well, I don't want to do that. I'd rather read a line or something like that. And you can do it. It just comes off really stilted and contrived. And what I think you're trying to do in a lot of cases when if your target audience is a prospective member, you want to feel like the person is actually that you see on camera. You want to feel like they're actually talking to you and sharing with you something that's real and not just a commercial, which is, a lot of times with a scripted piece, it can feel that way. But it's not always like the one thing that just is another side note, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Steve, as well. It's like, don't always go to like the leaders. Don't always go to board members or GMs. I mean, they can be really good. And a lot depends on what the message is and what you really want to communicate in that video. But sometimes the best characters in these videos are people that are just like the people you're trying to attract to come to your club. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, to your earlier point, people aren't actors, so we don't want to try to make them actors. So we want to get their authentic voice. But you're right. What we try to find are people who are the most passionate about the club, who have a story to tell. A lot of times board members or just leaders within the club might have certain messages that they want to convey, and that's fine. But what we're really looking for is that member experience and what makes that club special. And the best way to get that is to talk with members and find out what their stories are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and board members are members too. So, the idea is just to not have this kind of scripted way about going about doing it. But it does beg the next question really, which is like, how do you find the best, people? Like, what's going to make someone the right person to put on camera?
Well, that's a tough one. It's hard. It's usually you want somebody who definitely has a story to tell, who has passion for the club, who really loves the club, wants to share that message. You want talkers, you want people that can tell stories. So if you're thinking about doing a video about your club, think about who can really articulate that message, who's not going to be camera shy, and who can really share their story.
Yeah, it is kind of like, I mean, everyone has a part to play. And if you need someone to, if you're looking for someone who, a younger couple with a family who can really talk about the amenities and what it means to the club, I mean, that is going to direct you in a certain way. But what you're saying for sure is that idea of like someone who's a talker, someone who is not going to, go, oh my gosh, I'm really nervous and feel very self-conscious through the interview session, because I mean, it's hard, and people that get themselves in that position usually feel like it doesn't go well. In some cases, it really doesn't go well. But the other thing I was going to add is just that think about the message, think about what you want to convey and who those best people are to convey those messages as well, because that's it's a big part of it.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Ed, is just we're not asking them to be stating the core values of the club or be formal. It's really an informal conversation about their experience. And the only people that can speak to their experience are those people. So it's really just about them.
Yeah. I don't want to necessarily we could spend a whole hour just talking about interviews and how to do an interview. But for people that aren't used to conducting interviews with people, And what do you think are the most important things that people need to think about if you've never if you're thinking about producing a video, but you've never interviewed someone before, what do you need to know?
Well, there's quite a bit. I guess first and foremost, just remember that your voice is probably not going to be on camera. You want people to speak in complete sentences, to no yes or no answers. And I think the other really important thing is just to make them feel at ease. Remind them that you're having a conversation with them. It's not a Q&A. It's a conversation. Forget that the camera is here. I know that's easy to do sometimes, but that sounds harder than it. Sorry, that sounds harder than it sounds. Can I stop for a second? I just need to. God Almighty,
you're doing a great job.
What do you want to say here on this? Are we talking about like the basics of doing interviews or?
Kind of. Let's pick it up here though.
Okay.
Give ourselves a few seconds and I'll
sure.
Pick it up. Yeah, I think the one of the keys, like you said though, is like asking open-ended questions. I mean, it seems so obvious, but Steve and I, we both worked in TV news for a long time. And a lot of times when you're interviewing people as a media member, if you give them the option to give you a one-word answer with a closed-ended question, they'll take it. So, and we also know that when you give people the option of answering an open-ended question, a lot of times they'll give you way more than you ever expected, and that can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing, especially if they don't know when to stop talking. But it really can be good because sometimes you'll get those nuggets and those sound bites that you might not have otherwise had. But it is one of those things where I think, in my experience interviewing people, it's having a sense for what you want that person to say, like know where you want to go with it, so that when they say it, you know that you've got it. I think that's one of the hardest things in general. And really, I think it's got to be one of the biggest differentiators between a professional producer and someone who doesn't do this for a living is that you know when you have a great soundbite and you know when to start it, the soundbite, and when to end it. Like you got it right there. One of the big mistakes that I think a lot of younger producers make is they hear a great soundbite, but it might be 45 seconds long, and it's like it could have been 10 seconds or something like that. Don't you think, Steve?
Yeah, and I think what you end up doing a lot, and this is part of the process, is just you're asking the same question over and over again in a different way to try to get that same answer, maybe a little bit more briefly. Again, just going back to having a conversation with someone. What I like to do is to lead them along and provide them with an observation, but then follow that up with, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that and just see what they say, Yeah. So that's a way of sort of avoiding those one-word answers or sometimes they, like you said, they might go off a little bit, but usually if you ask the same question in a number of ways enough times, you're going to get what you need.
Yeah. I want to get, that's a great point about just in general about the just asking those questions. Now I lost my train of thought. You were just talking about what it is, whenever there's a little glitch in the, I don't know if you noticed
I noticed that. Yeah. My camera kind of glitched.
Yeah. What were you just saying though about asking the question that,
I was talking about just providing them with an observation and then following that up with, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So
okay.
One of the things that I've always liked to do is actually kind of lead the answer in a way. And you're sort of telegraphing to the person, like, this is what I'm going after. And you almost like you can create the context for the answer. And it also helps that person who's answering going, all right, I know where we're going with this question. So like you said earlier, most times the interview question is not going to be used in the video. So you can lay context. You can help them understand what you're getting at and why you're asking a certain question. And sometimes people forget that. Can we talk about B-roll? Because this is one of those things where, in many cases, this is where the art is. And, honestly, where a lot of people who get into video production, they come from the video side and filming and actually capturing images. But a lot of times you'll hear people, when it comes to shooting videos for golf courses or golf clubs or, of the like, it's drone. And people think of the drones as like being this catch-all way of like getting a lot of footage. But I'd love to hear your perspective just on, and this kind of goes back to like a filmmaking type thing, but your perspective on types of shots and when drones are great, when they're not great. And, that whole, as people in the video world, we talk about, wide, medium, and tight shots. And you're so good at mixing those up as a producer, but I'd love to get your overall thought and belief if you have a philosophy on some of that stuff in general.
Sure. Well, drones are great. They've really revolutionized, production. What used to require a helicopter now can be purchased for a few $100s, and you can fly it overhead. I mean, I'm not an expert on drones, but I have worked with drone pilots. And you need to have the proper drone that can work in various conditions, wind, etc. But just from a storytelling standpoint, from a cinematography standpoint, drones are great at capturing, setting the location, setting the scene. You think about watching a sports event on television. What's the first thing you see? You see an overhead aerial shot. It sets the scene. It creates a time and place.
You're looking live at Lambeau Field.
Exactly. Right. Thank you, Brent. But and the other thing too is for really compelling drone photography, you need to be flying at certain times of the day where the course is going to look its best. And that's generally the 3 hours after sunrise and about the 3 hours before sunset. That's when your course is going to look its best. I think in terms of showcasing your club, your course, even the amenities, the pool, the tennis courts, the clubhouse, it creates a visual that you're not going to see anyplace else. So for that, it's really compelling. But what it doesn't capture, and this is really important to remember, is it does not capture the fellowship of your members, the humanity of their experience. For that, you need to be on the ground. You need to be close up. You need to have the right cameras to capture that. And, you really want to create or capture the essence of your club, the fun, the joy that people are having by experiencing your club. So they're two very different things. We like to do that with either photographs or video cameras, but the drone has its place. It certainly does. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that the drone does too is that it creates movement in the shots. That's really great. One of our club videos that we're really proud of, we did not use a drone for, but we used golf carts with a camera in a Ronin gimbal, which creates a Steadicam shot. Mm-hmm. All of our shots, our moving shots, were used with golf carts, and that worked well for that purpose. It's not for every course or every club, but it did work well for that one.
How do you know when, though? Like, I'm assuming you're talking about the Olympic Club. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is in San Francisco, and mm-hmm. You're not going to go put a drone up in downtown. But like, how do you know though when And did the idea of like using a gimbal in a golf cart just sort of come to you? I mean, like, what was that moment, that decision-making moment all about?
Right. Well, we were up front. We knew that we weren't going to be using a drone. The club did not want to use a drone for that project. So when we got on property at the club, we noticed there were a lot of great vantage points of the club. It was hilly, and the golf carts. Obviously, the golf path, follows the fairway. So, the Ronin gimbal is just fantastic in terms of creating a really steady shot. So that's what we captured. And so you've got, you're passing through trees and they're kind of going in through the foreground, and behind the trees are golfers are peeking out and you're capturing, a golfer taking a shot or a swing. And it creates that movement that gives your piece energy the way drones can do as well. But, sometimes it's you're better off by being on the ground.
Right.
We were recently at a club out in California where our ground level shots, I think, were more compelling than our drone shots, just based on what we were able to capture. So it really kind of depends on the situation.
This is one of those things where it can sound kind of esoteric and artsy, but it is the craft of production and videography and filmmaking on a larger degree. But it's being able to really tell a story through the camera. And people who do that and have done it for their careers, they can talk about it really fluently. And it may not really hit home with someone, if you're watching this video, it's like, well, what does that mean? But it really does. It's a matter of like connecting. I don't know. You tell me. It's like, because it's like connecting the mood, connecting the words that someone says. It's like, you talked about setting the stage. It's like, that's why I think Brent Musburger, whoever it was that was able to speak to the video so perfectly. You're looking live at Lambeau Field. It's like, and not that, the pieces that we would produce or that a club is going to produce is going to be that literal, but can you just kind of help our audience, like make that connection between like really compelling images and the words and in that moment? Like, I don't know if you've got great words for that. I know I don't.
Well, the magic of cinematography really is controlling the frame. If you look out using your eyes, you see so much information all at once. But what the frame can do is it can confine what you see. So you're allowing the viewer only to see what you want them to. So that's the beauty in it. And we use that trick all the time with every shot, whether it's a big, wide, expansive shot, or maybe it's something that's very macro, that it's a detail. It's a painting on a wall that you've seen that the camera can capture at an angle that your eye really can't. Mm-hmm. It's getting those details, blending them all together to create a composition of a place, so you see it all the time on television. If you watch sports television, you see montages, whether it's the PGA or the NFL. Those are so compelling because they take you from place to place, from shot to shot, with all kinds of different carefully composed images matched to music and to words. And that's where the magic lies, mm-hmm. And it's being able to, first of all, capture those shots, write those words, and then mm-hmm. find a way to combine them that really move a viewer. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the sports thing, because when you're a sports guy in a news department, you're the sports department. You're just, what I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it is. And yet, some of the best pieces of storytelling that I think I've seen, even promotional stuff, like you mentioned PGA and the NFL films used to do. It's just amazing stuff, like capturing the emotion of games and moments and putting together montages. You ever want to watch like great human interest pieces? College Game Day in the fall on ESPN. I mean, they just have this, and their ability to make words and pictures go together in this way that is so compelling is remarkable. And for a guy, Steve worked for a firm that they're one of their biggest clients. I would say their biggest client, ABC Disney. And you've worked on some really big projects that are not sports related. What is it, do you think, that sports pieces like that are able to tap into that, I don't know, maybe it's harder for other types of, I don't know, topics to nail down?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with sports, if we're talking sports, we all have a familiarity with it. We've watched sports our whole lives. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up NFL films, because that was born out of a desire to showcase the NFL in a way that was never seen before. If you think about it, back when the NFL Films was founded, people watched the NFL on a TV back when, in the 60s, when there's like one or two cameras that were filming. And whereas they decided, hey, let's get down on the sideline, let's show angles, and let's create and capture sound, and show and bring the NFL to viewers in a way that they've never seen it before. And that was really the sort of that's where all of this was really born, and it's come light years since that time. But
yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, I took that big breath like I was going to say something.
Oh no,
which I was, but I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. But yeah, that's kind of. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
That's right. I interrupted you. It's my fault.
That's okay.
But no, I think that what you're saying though is what we're also trying to do when we produce videos for clubs, which is like what you're saying. The beauty of NFL films and those old pieces. I mean, if you're old enough to remember this stuff, but it brought you onto the field. And you could listen to what was being said in the huddles, right? And it's like, even now, like stuff, when you watch some of the footage of, any highlight reel, it's like it pulls you and it brings you there. And that's, I think, what we're trying to convey in many ways with club, videos for private clubs, is that that's what you're trying to do for the audience. You're trying to bring them into the club. You're trying to connect with them in a way so they can imagine what it's like to be there. And we mentioned this, a piece that we produced for the Olympic Club last year, I think. And yet, some of the things that are so memorable are the shots of the athletes at the club that you feel like you're with the guy jumping into the pool. You feel like you're on the court with the tennis player hitting the ball. It's like, and that's done with camera angles, right? And just in just a different way of looking. You can't get some of those shots from standing off the court, 25 feet away and just trying to zoom into that stuff. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. You're trying to capture a piece of the club in a way that it's never been seen before. And that's the beauty of cinematography is, by depending on what lens you use, depending on what the light is like, you're going to capture an image that's never been captured before. And so I think that's really too, it's exciting when our club clients see the videos for the first time and they're seeing the club in a way they've never seen it before. You're creating those images and really creating an intimate relationship with the viewer to say to them, hey, check out this club. This place is amazing. Imagine yourself here. That's what we really want to get is for the viewer to experience the club through video and make them compel them to really want to visit, to maybe be a part of that club.
Yeah. All right. Let me give you it's kind of a layup, but I know it's hard to explain. How important is music and sound in these pieces? That's your layup.
Yeah, if you want to find out how important music and sound is, just mute your television the next time you're watching it.
Yeah, right.
And you'll realize that it's really, really important.
Yeah.
Music is really everything. It will dictate the feeling that the audience comes away with. You really got to make good choices. The rule of thumb that I always have is go big. You don't underestimate your project. Don't underestimate the visuals. It's worthy of great music. So if something sounds like it's Raiders of the Lost Ark or E.T. and too big for your piece, chances are it's not. Just try it. Lay down a score to your video that is really going to make it compelling, epic, moving. That's the key. And with our stuff, because it is, as we mentioned, documentary storytelling, it's unscripted. You really want to choose those sound bites carefully. You want to craft a great story, but you also want to have those human moments, those comments that really, really speak to what the heart of your club is, what the heart of that experience is, why people love it. That's just, you're going to have a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor, as they say, when you're done with your project, but you want to make sure that you're choosing all the best commentary for your piece. It's going to showcase your club. Yep.
Can we come back to that one in a second? Because that is a whole part of this, with editing and the art of editing that I think is just maybe underappreciated, but it's certainly like it flies under the radar of a lot of people who are producing video maybe for the first time. They'll think, oh, well, they know how to use iMovie or something like that. But if we can come back to that one, I'll just try to remember that. We'll revisit that, because I do want to just go back to what you're saying about go big with music. Mm-hmm. It seems to me like the 2 times you notice music in a video is when it's awful. Like, oh my gosh. And when it's so bad, it detracts from what you're actually watching in the message of the video. The second time you notice is when it is just amazing and compelling. And, in some cases, when you talk about go big, we produce some stuff that you've been behind that is like the words that, like majestic come to mind. And you don't get words like majestic when talking about music with like corporate music. That's like that. Hey, I think I heard that track on a commercial the other day, right? It's like, but what, you talk about great, like, how do you know, like for you, and even if you can't really explain it, I mean, we'll do our best, but it's like, how do you know what music is going to be the right fit for that part in the piece?
Well, I think it just needs to move you. We're all TV watchers. We're all music listeners. We know good music from bad music. We know how music should make us feel. So it's really just trusting your own judgment and in saying, okay, does this move me? Mm-hmm. You talk about industrial corporate music. That's the last thing you want to do. You lay down a piece of corporate a soundtrack, and you're saying, I'm choosing to make this piece boring. It's not worthy of great music. So, you right then you've lost. So, take your time with music, find stuff that's really compelling, that sparks emotion, that makes the audience feel the way you want them to feel about your club.
Yeah. And I guess that's probably it too. And just a very micro level, it's like understanding where you are in the story that you're producing and what is the emotion at that time that you want the viewer to feel, and sort of let that guide what music is there. I know one of the things I used to do, especially in the early days when I was, just starting out in news, we did not use a lot of music in our pieces, right? I mean, it was just like a news story or sports story. But so when I really started playing with it, I always loved it, but I would take different tracks and I would put it underneath, the sound bites, and I'd try it out, and it's like, oh, that didn't work. That didn't feel right. And so, it's okay to play with that stuff, but just to make a connection back to the beginning and the target audience that you're trying to reach, and the message you want to convey. A lot of times that whole tone and feel can be dictated by the music. Right. And who you want, like, for example, if your audience is a younger audience, you might have music that sounds more indie than someone that's older, or it depends on what the message is that you want to communicate. If it's lighthearted, if it's something that's more serious. I mean, just different, there's a whole range of options in that way.
Yeah, music is going to dictate the whole direction of the piece.
Yeah.
And you can take the same piece and change out the music and make it feel completely different.
Yeah. And it matters, I mean, you can go crazy trying to find the right music. I mean, you absolutely can. You can spend hours and hours trying to find the right track, but you have a knack for that I don't have. And it makes such a difference. Can we go back to the editing conversation?
Sure.
Because I think that's where, I think that is where so many producers earn their keep, professionally, which is really making difficult decisions about what sound bites to keep, what shots to keep. And a lot of times, like, I know that as a producer, you'll be out in the field and you'll do an interview and you'll hear someone say something, you'll go, oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. But then you get it and you get in there and it's like, it's not really fitting, but it's such a great soundbite. So you try to wedge it in, but it might not make it. And sometimes the hardest thing is just saying, man, I love that and I'd love to include it, but I just can't make it work in this piece. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, you and I have had that conversation in the past where I think I forgot exactly what you said, but I'm paraphrasing. Is, producers fall in love with their sound bites too much, or something like that. And you're just trying to get this. You did. Yeah. I think I turned in a script that was about a minute or two too long, and it was, you're cutting it down, and it's like, oh, you don't need that. You don't need that. And I think when you're in the field and you're relating to these people that, you're doing interviews, you're getting to know them, and yeah, you're remembering certain things that they said that really, made an impact on you in the moment. And you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to use that, but there's really no place for it, or the piece doesn't need it, or maybe it's redundant.
Right.
You've got to know when to cut those and just keep the best of the best and make sure that it's a cohesive story and makes sense from start to finish.
Yeah. I think redundancy is the biggest trap that people fall into. It's they've already said this 3 times, like, sure, 3 different people, but you don't need 3 and if 3 people, if one of them is the best person to say it, let that one person say it, but you don't need all 3 people saying that. And it's a really tricky thing. And I can tell you from a political perspective, sometimes we're saying, well, we really do need to have the board president in there. We cut all of his other sound bites. It's like, well, yeah, it's because he was terrible. It could be that, right? Or it's like, but sometimes you have to find that opportunity to work in that person for political reasons. Like, well, yeah, they're going to be really upset. But I remember we used to, when Steve and I worked together at the University of Minnesota, and Glenn Mason was the head football coach at Minnesota. And he was such an egomaniac. I should say this. I mean, he may not have been an egomaniac, but he was very interested in the production process. And at the end of his press conference, he'd go, you guys just interviewed me for like 15 minutes and you're going to use 10 seconds tonight. And we're kind of like, well, yeah, that's what you do. It's like that 10 seconds. Now, we might use another different 10 seconds tomorrow night, but it is that. I mean, you do conduct long interviews sometimes because you are trying to find a couple things that are really going to help weave your story together. And it goes back to the beginning with what you're saying, Steve. It's like, the scripting in a documentary style video happens after the interviews are conducted. And you go back and you start thinking about what you're going to open with, what that first soundbite is, and where is that going to go. And you really start to plot it out. And you hope to God that you have all the sound bites that you need to get you from the start to the finish. But if you've done your job, then hopefully, that works out.
Right. And in the case of Glenn Mason, that 15 minutes, sometimes you need that much time. Usually our interviews are longer than that, a half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. You need to cover all those bases and make sure that you're getting what you need. So sometimes it takes that long just to get, a few minutes worth of interview.
Yeah. We didn't prep for this question, but I'll ask it to you. Like, if you're going to give one piece of advice to someone, just, any advice that is maybe venturing into this for the first time, or they produced a video and they weren't crazy, they want to do a better job next time, or someone who's thinking about producing a video, what would be a piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, I think I would tell them to trust their judgment, but rely on others. You can't do it all yourself. Trust in the talents of people that can do things that you can't do. I mean, I know that I trust my videographers and my editors and people that I consult with and people that help guide me, like yourself. You rely on others. Sometimes they might see something that you don't. So
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. None of us is smarter than all of us, as we like to say.
That's true.
Yeah. I guess I would say this, like, there are a couple things, but it really does go back to starting. If you can always remember what is the key message that you want to communicate, so many things fall in line from that point. Who you interview, the questions that you ask, where you film, down to how you edit the music selection. All of it comes back to what you want to communicate. And like you said at the beginning, Steve, is how do you want them to feel at the end of the piece? That's one of my favorite questions in the early stages of fact finding. It's like, all right, close your eyes. You just finished watching a movie. How do you feel right now? Or the video. And so that's, it's definitely the other thing I was just going to say. What prompted it in my head was be careful when you interview someone and they start telling you a story, because a lot of times those stories are not quick. They are very long and they can eat up a ton of time. And then you have the story and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a great story, but it's like, it's not going to make it because it took him a minute and 45 seconds to tell. So that's when you really become aware of time in videos for sure.
Absolutely. That's a tricky question to ask. Do you have any examples of when blah, 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 whatever it is?
Yeah, exactly.
Get ready for a 2-minute story that you're not going to be able to use.
Right, exactly. It's like you want to stop them halfway through. Just stop. We're not going to use this.
Yeah.
This is going around way too long. No. Anyway, all right, Steve, thank you for your insight and your input today. This is, hopefully it's helpful. I know it's, I always learn a little bit when I spend time with you and talking through things. I will tell you this, the nugget that you shared today that really hit home with me is just the, making the decision of what you want people to look at when you're shooting. I mean, that is sort of that magic, like controlling that. It's almost like connecting with that thing in your brain where your brain is going there. So just take them there. And that's awesome.
The camera is your friend. Yeah. It helps you control that for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Steve, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
We'll talk to you.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. If you find episodes like this helpful, be sure to share it and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. Until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.